Okay, so I wanted to make a quick video about there's this young woman, neurodivergent rebel, um, on my Instagram, and she made a post today that I noticed. It says, "The beauty of finally discovering you're autistic. Finally learning to work with myself, not against myself. Living an autistic life. For many years, I was trying to fit myself into a box not built for me, damaging myself along the way." I think this is so true, and this goes along with my video that I made, the purpose of your diagnosis. And I think so many people get caught up trying to tell other people, no, you're not, and blah, 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 and you don't act autistic. Or the funny thing about autism, especially high functioning autism, okay, there's different ends of the spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum, you have people that are obviously visibly autistic and low functioning. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have people like myself. We look normal, we act normal. Like right now, I seem like a normal person. When the camera is off and when nobody's here, it's just me and my daughter, I'm like a 5-year-old. Like I literally speak like a 5-year-old, or I'll speak in some kind of foreign accent, or my daughter and I just joke around and say funny things. Sometimes we discuss inappropriate, well, what other people would consider inappropriate things, because that's just, we have a different understanding of things than most people. So who you see when you're outside of my home and well, even sometimes in my home, very few people come to my home. So when you're outside of my home, I'm a different person. I mean, I do my best to be what's comfortable to the people I'm around. So 9 times out of 10, I'm mirroring your behaviors. I tend to take on the laugh of the people I'm with. When I was married to well, I'm still married to my husband, but when he was living with me, he and I laughed the same. Like he had this specific laugh, and I was actually starting to take on his laugh because that's just the way he laughed, and I didn't even realize it until later on. Let's see, we walked the same. When I'm around my mother, we walk the same. Silly things like that most people don't notice, and I don't even notice myself. Like sometimes people will call us fake, or that we're pretending to be something we're not, and that's really not what it is. All we're doing is trying to create a comfortable, safe environment for ourselves and the people around us. Because not only is it anxiety invoking, not only is it an anxious situation for us, not only does it cause us anxiety, but it also, sometimes we tend, our personal habits, our personal behaviors that are unique to us are sometimes so different or misunderstood that they're uncomfortable for other people. And we want to avoid that because that makes us even more uncomfortable. So it's like a ping pong game of anxiety, and it just keeps getting worse. The more we be ourselves, the worse we get, and the weirder we act, and then we're just like, forget this. And then we got to go home. We go home, we go to sleep, take a nap, or have a meltdown. It all depends. But yeah, what she said really hit me. For many years, I was trying to fit myself into a box not built for me. For all this time, mental health has been telling me I'm bipolar. They've been telling me I have PTSD and anxiety. And yes, I do have CPTSD. I do have anxiety. I'm not so sure anymore that it's social anxiety. I know social anxiety and agoraphobia are two different things. But a lot of people assume agoraphobia is like the fear of people and the fear of crowds. It's not. It's the fear of not being able to escape a situation or not being able to get away from something. So it's not necessarily the fear of the crowd. It's the fear of not knowing how to remove yourself if something does go wrong. And it totally makes sense to me now. I discovered this when I was in California, because one of a CPS worker came to talk to me, and she had mentioned something about agoraphobia or social anxiety. I think she mentioned social anxiety, not agoraphobia. But she had a background in mental health or psychiatry or something. I can't remember for sure. But anyways, that helped me to understand myself, and that actually kind of helped get the ball rolling as far as me discovering that it wasn't bipolar, that it isn't... because although bipolars and people who have bipolar, sometimes there are people who are autistic that have a comorbidity of bipolar. But there are a lot of the essential symptoms, essential presentation of symptoms that I don't have. And that's when I started thinking to myself, this is not, they're confusing some symptoms for something like racing thoughts. Autistic people, it's like we never stop thinking. Our mind is constantly going. Like even when we go to sleep, it's like impossible to quiet our minds. At least in my experience, it's impossible for me to quiet my mind. Like I'm always either talking to myself in my head or hearing something going on, or my brain is constantly stimulated. Even when I sleep, I can hear things that are going on around me. My mind will work in, like I used to have difficulty waking up to my alarm clocks because I would still sleep. I would be hearing my alarm, but it would work its way into my dream. Like it would have a place in my dream to where it wouldn't signal my body to wake up. Like it was just a part of my dream. So I was still continuing to sleep through it. And it was a nuisance, but it wasn't anything I would wake up for. So I had problems with that. But a lot of the symptoms of autism, like the racing thoughts, like the meltdowns, until you can actually identify that you're having meltdowns rather than a manic episode, or I've noticed there's a big difference. Once I was educated about manic episodes, that's when I really started to question, like, yeah, I'm not so sure I had the right diagnosis. But now that I do understand that, it's so much easier to be self-regulated, to gain resources that I need without having to have specific resources and facilities and mental health help that's not necessarily right at my fingertips right now. And it's not anything I can necessarily handle right at this point, because I do have a lot of trust issues when it comes to mental health at this point. They've done a lot of damage. Because of not understanding my disorder and actually having me diagnosed as severely mental ill when I was not. And so the treatment of me was pretty unacceptable in my opinion, and I'm sure in a lot of other people's, but that's done a lot of damage for my trust when it comes to mental health. I'm actually trained to work in mental health, and I won't do it because I refuse to allow myself to be subject to treating people that way. I don't want any part of that. I know I could probably use my education, my abilities somewhere else, but for me to actually go out and search for that right now, I don't really have the energy, and I need to make sure that I get myself in a position where I'm happy and where I want to be and where I'm doing something I want to do every day, where I'm not going to be burnt out by other people's issues and concerns combined with mine. So I have to really focus on me right now, me and my daughter, and I can't focus on working in the mental health field because I do believe I would burn out too easily, because I am so empathetic and sensitive to other people's emotions. It's very difficult for me. Of course, autistic and empathy, no way. That's another crock of crap. I'm sorry. I think they confuse a lot of the times people with narcissism and people with autism. I do believe, this is my personal belief, I've never seen this anywhere, I've never read this anywhere, this is just my gathering of information, my knowing some narcissists, my knowing some autistic people, my knowing people with bipolar and other disorders, and my experience in my education and my own research. And I do believe narcissism is on the autism spectrum. I don't know how anyone in the mental health field feels about that, or psychiatry, but they have a lot of similarities, and I do honestly believe that they are on the same spectrum, because I know narcissists are generally very brilliant people and very successful people, because they find a way to I don't know, I guess they do lack that empathy, and so they're able to just get where they need to be without being hurt or affected by what they might do to other people. That doesn't go to say that they always do. It doesn't go to say that they always destroy other people, because there are some narcissists out there that are just narcissists, and it's a little bit obnoxious. You have to know how to set specific boundaries and what behaviors to just ignore and not let it affect you, then you can actually coexist with a narcissist. But they're not all that way. Some of them are very malignant. Some of them are very covert and malignant and not good for anybody to be around. But there are still some that aren't as dangerous, and they do resemble Aspies. I think Aspies are confused as being narcissistic, confused for being narcissistic a lot. I'm a very confident person, but I'm far from narcissistic. I'm not narcissistic in any way, shape, or form, but some of my behaviors might appear to be narcissistic because I do have a lot of confidence. I don't know, blow up my own head sometimes, but sometimes I use that as a method of boosting my own confidence because I'm feeling insecure or anxious, or as a way of just breaking the ice and making things more comfortable between me and someone else, so that I'm not like blowing someone else up too much versus blowing myself up too much. Like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Every situation is different. But that being said, all this time I've been fitting myself into this bipolar box, and like behaviors would resemble some of my behaviors, or symptoms would resemble some of my symptoms, but only to a certain degree. There was still that certain degree that was just like, I don't know, like this may not be what it is. And then when I finally understood what autistic spectrum disorder was, and what it entailed, like it encompassed everything. It encompassed every difficulty I was having in my life. Everything psychiatrically or mentally, everything physically, depression and anxiety, all of it was in one beautiful package. And that includes all my strengths, because autism spectrum disorder, although it may be difficult for some people to understand, and although it is uncomfortable for some people, I think the problem lies in that we focus on the negative aspects of it. And we do that with every disorder. We focus, none of anyone's disabilities have to be disabling. You can have a disability but still be so able in so many areas. But it's difficult when everyone's focusing on disability. It's difficult to embrace the ability and provide a more nurturing environment that embraces those strengths and allows you to utilize those to be successful and functional in life. And I think that is where the problem lies. But all this time I've been putting myself inside a box that I didn't fit in. I was like the round peg that couldn't fit in the square hole, or the square peg that couldn't fit in the round hole, which way it goes. Now that I understand who I am, and even though people aren't accepting it, like there's plenty of people in my life that aren't accepting it. I don't know if any of you can see the difference. I don't know if any of you can see the difference between me before and me now. And the majority of that is because I'm no longer in an abusive situation, and I'm finally in control of my own life. I'm finally in control of my own parenting of my child's safety. I know she's okay. I know she's with me. I know that things are going to be all right as long as she remains with me, and I can fulfill my responsibility to her as her mother. That was the majority of it. But the rest of it lies in, now that I'm not being pushed beyond my limits, now that my symptoms aren't being exacerbated, I'm so different, but I'm so much the same as when I was a kid, when I was like innocent, and when I was still happy and I was living life before all the bad things started happening. And it's so funny to catch myself sometimes. Like, I talk to myself a lot, and I realize that what I'm doing is I'm talking to myself in every which way, shape, and form, and practicing responses. Like, this is the only thing I can attribute it to. Like, either it's pure boredom, or I'm really literally, because I'll go back and have conversations with other people that resemble the conversations I have with myself. And in my mind is like me talking to myself, and I'm like choosing, okay, it's like multiple choice in there while I'm interacting with people, like, okay, I got this. I know what I'm going to say because I've done this before with myself. Things are so much more comfortable that way. I don't know if that makes any sense, or if you have any clue where I just veered off to the left for or what for. But anyways, yeah, in the wrong box. Now that I understand my triggers, now that I understand what makes me melt down, I still do on occasion have a few meltdowns when I get passionate and excited about something. As you can see right now, I'm starting to get short of breath. That's one of my, it's not necessarily a bad anxiety, but it's like an overexcitement where I'm just too, and people used to confuse that for substance abuse. Someone very near and dear to me, not very near and dear to me, but a very important person in my life used to confuse my being passionate about something with substance. Are you on that shit? Are you on that shit? You're moving kind of fast. Are you? And that was so upsetting to me. Like a lot of our behaviors when we are hyperactive, when we are speaking fast, I was constantly being confused with someone who was on drugs, and I wasn't on drugs. And that was so much more frustrating to the situation. Like, even if I had been, are you serious? 9 times out of 10, when I was going through something, like, me being on drugs was the least of anyone's worries. It wasn't the case. And then so that would just exacerbate everything to even more. So there you have it. I had myself in a box for like bipolar at what they had diagnosed me as. Everyone else had me in a box of substance abuse issues. The hospital released me with a piece of paper that had like 100 symptoms. And at the top it said methamphetamine use disorder. And I was like, what? I had overdosed on Seroquel. I had been admitted to the hospital for overdosing because I had overdosed on my Seroquel. I attempted to kill myself. That's not anything to make light of, but methamphetamines was not even involved. Like, I overdosed on Seroquel. I went to the hospital, and they sent me home with a cardiac diet. No one explained anything to me about a cardiac issue or heart disease. But they had me on a cardiac diet, and they sent me home with a list that said methamphetamines use disorder and had like 100 symptoms. I went through that list of symptoms, and I checked off the ones that I had. I had one. One symptom. Never once did they talk to me about it. Never once did they ask me anything. And when I woke up from being unconscious from using from overdosing on Seroquel, which was one of my prescriptions, they were giving me morphine. I'm assuming for my heart, because I do know a little bit about things medically speaking, but at the time I was unable to ask, and I wasn't understanding how to communicate to them that I was confused as fuck as to what was going on. Like, why am I on a cardiac diet? Why are you giving me morphine? I'm one of those people that goes to the hospital, and I generally ask for non-narcotic medications. You can go through my medical history and see anywhere that they've, especially Vicodin. Vicodin makes me really sick. It makes me throw up. It's disgusting. I hate it. And it does nothing for my body. Like, it does nothing for my pain. So, anytime they prescribe me Vicodin, I've never filled it because I'm just like, you guys won't listen to me. You won't listen to me. And I'll tell them I don't want Vicodin. And they would take that as me saying I want something stronger or different. But I would always elaborate. 9 times out of 10, non-narcotics, which is why I would naproxen or naproxen, because I am allergic or sensitive, whichever, to ibuprofen and to sulfa medications. And so naproxen or naproxen, which is similar to ibuprofen, but it's not the same. I do tolerate naproxen. Tramadol. I was taking tramadol for a while. Tylenol, obviously. But other things, I wasn't one that wanted any narcotic medication. And then there was times they labeled me as a drug seeker, like, because I was having pain they couldn't explain. And because I wouldn't accept, like, the Vicodin or whatever, they assumed that because the Vicodin is not anything I want, that I wanted something stronger. Like, really, I'm not a medical doctor in the sense that I know what's going to help with my pain. I really would be in there anytime I was in there just for relief and not specifically for drugs, especially when I'm someone that requests non-narcotics. Needless to say, they had me with this paper that said methamphetamine use disorder. Never once did anyone talk to me and ask me if I was a drug user. Never once did anyone talk to me and ask me if I had heart problems, nor did they even explain to me that I could possibly have heart problems. But I know people that have heart problems that are on morphine to control their heart or to assist with their heart. I don't know how it works, but they do that. And so because I woke up on a cardiac diet and they were giving me morphine, I was assuming that was why. And because I was alone and because of my disorder, I wasn't able to voice that and ask them what the F was going on. And so still to this day, I have no clue. But needless to say, that's JFK in India for you. They sent me home with a bladder infection after I had all the signs of a stroke. Here I was, a woman that smoked like a pack of cigarettes a day, a half a pack of cigarettes a day, was on birth control, had all kinds of stress and other issues, a lot of psychiatric medications, and they sent me home with a bladder infection when I had all the symptoms and plenty of reasons as to possibly having like a mild stroke. And they just were so upset by the fact that I couldn't tolerate the busy waiting room. And I kept getting on the phone and saying, hey, I need to be in a room. I can't sit here. I can't sit here like this. Like, it was ridiculously full. And so finally the nurse just comes out and she's like, okay, well, we did a urine specimen and you have a bladder infection and here's your prescription. Go fill this and go. And it was Bactrin. I'm allergic to it. Needless to say, they had me in this box as they had me bipolar, severely mentally ill. They had me as a drug abuser. And I'm not any of these things. Like, I'm not going to lie to the world and say I've never done drugs. Drugs have saved my life. Like, there's times I've been suicidal and I've done drugs. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not afraid to admit that. But because I was honest about that at one point in my life, and I did the responsible thing as an adult and as a mother, and I found myself in a situation where that was going to become a risk, so I put myself into a shelter. That's when everything started. Jeffrey Martin Miller had already put out an attempt to locate or a child abduction services or some shit for me and my child to control us and to bring us back to where he was. He had no right to do so. But they used that, and then they questioned me about my activities and where I was and what I was doing. They claimed I had a dirty drug test. No proof of a dirty drug test. I know I was clean. I know I was not using drugs. I know I wasn't. But because I had admitted to using previous to them contacting me or previous to them interacting with me, they thought it was acceptable to say that I had a positive drug test. And even when I asked the woman, I was like, I want to see the drug test. Where is it? It's a non-admissible in court drug test, first of all. Second of all, let me see it. If it's dirty, if it's positive, let me see it. I want to see it. It's already been disposed of. They took my daughter at that point. I was in a controlled environment, a domestic violence shelter. Very controlled. No way for anybody to do drugs. No way for anybody to bring drugs in. Very controlled. We couldn't even communicate with the outside via Facebook, via cell phones, any of that shit. It was very controlled, and I was safe there. And they removed my child from me there. Just to aid and abet a sexual predator against minors. That's totally beside the point. I'm getting way out of the flow. Shit, okay, out of the box. I'm not anything anybody's ever said I was. Like, just like any other human being, I've drank alcohol. Okay, maybe not every other human being's done drugs, but I've done drugs, yes. I'm not going to lie about that. I've never been a drug addict. I've never been a drug addict. I've never been addicted to drugs. Drugs have never destroyed my life. People using that as a means to remove my children, people using that as a means to label me as something or require something of me that I could not do for them, those are what destroyed my life. Those are the things that destroyed my life. My kids are under the impression that I made choices. I had choices. I made choices that resulted in my children being removed. Tell me one choice that gives anybody the right to remove anyone's children from them. My choices are irrelevant. Had I ever neglected or abused my children? No, never. I had never neglected or abused my children. I was not an abusive mother, nor did I fit in the box. I was not bipolar, nor did I fit in the box. I was not a drug addict. I did not fit in that box. All these years I've been coping and being abused and trying to cope and being abused and then being abused because my reaction to abuse was so irrational to everybody. Being abused is not a rational, normal situation. It's not anything most people are capable of tolerating in a rational way. You're being abused. You react. 9 times out of 10, irrationally. And it really upsets me that people can see someone with a brain trauma, like from a car accident, and they're up running around and they're like, okay, it's okay. He's just going crazy. He's just crazy because he bumped his head. He's a little bit combative because he bumped his head. Just hold on to him until he's okay. Okay, now it's not always okay to do with people with autism, but I'm just saying, we understand when people are physically hurt and there's brain trauma, but we forget that just like when you bump your head and you get brain damage and scar tissue, a concussion, that can affect you for the rest of your life. But just like that, when someone does damage to your brain via emotional abuse and things like that, those scars are still there just because you don't see them, just because you never saw a visible bruise or a visible wound or any sort of proof of impact or scarring. It's still there. It's still traumatic brain injury. And people don't understand that. And that's scientifically proven. Same thing goes with your heartstrings. You know where that came from? Heartstrings came from every time someone's like startled or stressed or hurt emotionally to the point where their heart, it can actually tear the threads in your heart, the musculature of your heart, causing heart damage. Me and my daughter both had signs and symptoms of cardiac distress the whole time we were separated. Rapid heartbeat. I know my daughter did. Every time she came to see me, her heart would just be pounding out of her chest, and she doesn't have that now. She doesn't have that now. Me, my heart would, whether I smoked cigarettes or not, whether I was drinking or not, my heart was very unpredictable. My blood pressure was high. Anyways, they had me in the wrong box. Requiring that I seek treatment for child protective services and family court. You can't require anyone to seek any kind of medical attention, not even for mental health. And for them to say I was mentally unstable with no proof, no signs, nothing indicating I had any mental instability except for this man's testimony, and they had me in that box. So when we have people in boxes and they struggle to survive and fit into that box and be compliant and do everything they're supposed to be doing so that everyone will accept that, okay, fine, all right, fine, here you go, you can have your kid back. And that's what I was trying to do, and that backfired on me big time, because people are like, well, you didn't look like, and you didn't act like anything was okay. Because I had to act as rational and composed as I possibly could, because every time I reacted in any way that they didn't like, I was mentally unstable and I was psychotic and I was hallucinating and I was this. It was ridiculous. But needless to say, now that I do understand that I am autistic, I do have autism spectrum disorder. I don't care who accepts it and who doesn't. It's really the purpose of it is for me to understand my behaviors and to better help myself be functional and to better help myself succeed. It's for no one else but me. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. And so anyone who's out there trying to fit in that box, I don't know, do whatever you have to do to understand you and your behaviors. Find someone who's really educated on the matter if you can't do it yourself, and get yourself a correct diagnosis. It's not anything that's absolutely necessary. If you're able to control your behavior, if you're able to understand and cope, and if you're able to be functional, then why, I mean, unless it's for self-betterment or something that, you know what I mean? Is it making sense? Some people don't have a lot of issues and don't need a diagnosis. Some people can still function. They're high functioning enough that they still function and they do well. They might have a few skips in the water here and there, or ripples in the water or whatever, but they still function. But then there's others of us that need that diagnosis so we know what we're dealing with, so we understand how to approach ourselves, not just everyone else. It's about us coping. It's about us being able to function. It's about bringing our level of functioning higher than what it is, because just because we are high functioning doesn't mean we are higher functioning than average people. We are high functioning autistics. We are still not as functional in the areas that are absolutely necessary for survival as an adult. Doesn't have to be that way if society would just understand there is a way to embrace everybody's strengths. No matter how minute someone else might think your strength is, it's a strength. And you have something to offer society and yourself and everyone else. And I think for so long we've like minimized people's strengths and focused on their disability rather than their abilities. And that's where we're going wrong. So yeah, Neurodivergent Rebel. She has a lot of good stuff to say. She's a gorgeous young woman. I've been following her profile on Instagram for quite some time, but check it out. The Aspie World too. Dan, he's awesome. He's amazing. I love his videos. I get so jealous of his videos. Like, he's so good at making his videos and editing them, and I can't edit for shit. I'm like, God, how does he do that? Like, and he makes his videos short enough, like, that you can still watch them and be involved, not involved, but for those of us that have poor attention span, for someone who has like shitty attention span, me, I can sit here and go on forever and expect people to listen to me. When I'm like the person that's squirrel. What? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. That's me. Do it to my kid all the time. But that's 30 minutes. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of it. Neurodivergent Rebel. Awesome person. And Dan from the Aspie World. Two of my favorites. Check them out on Instagram. I believe they have Twitter and YouTube as well. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Feel free to comment down below. Have a lovely day.